Welcome to another episode of A Second Chance at Life. I'm your host, Arvilla Beckworth, and I want to welcome you to this great interview. Now, this woman I'm going to bring to you is no stranger to me. She's more of a mother, more of a mentor, and someone that always has this joy about her, even through her trials and tribulations. Now, if you know Miss B, she has a story behind her. But the one thing that I always know, she's straightforward and she's drill sergeant, mentality. So I'm going to bring her on and let her tell you her story. That way you can know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying when grief, you're going through grief, you go through it during your own time, you deal with it the way you deal with it. But I wanted to bring someone that's been through it recently to kind of help you guys out because it's different when someone that's never really been through a tough grief to tell you what to do next. I wanted to make sure you guys actually hear from someone that's been through it and is still going through it. So let me bring my guest on, Miss B. Bruno. Hey, Miss B, how are you today?
Praise the Lord and God bless you. I am absolutely fantastic today.
Yes,
Today. Okay.
yes,
Because that
yes.
can change at any moment. All right. So, but I'm doing good and it's so good to see your face and you're just an awesome young woman. And y'all, the audience, look, let me tell you something about this young woman right here. I've known her for since 2002, I think it was.
Yes.
And she has always been striving to be her best version of herself. She's been knocked down, she's been dragged out, she's been all these different things, but she always got back up. And that's the key right there. So, whatever she's telling y'all, listen to it because she's going to bring you from one side to the other so that you can get to the best version of you. And that's exactly what you want. So, I had to do that. That was a free commercial right there.
I receive it, Miss B. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Amen.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Please tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I am a U.S. Army veteran, served in the military for almost 15 years. I am a widow, the widow of an Army veteran who passed away on August the 7th, 2018. And we raised four beautiful kids, his, mine, and ours. And let's see, right now I am working back up to the Drill Sergeant of Life. That's a brand that the Lord gave me back in 2010 and 11. And when my husband passed in 2018, I kind of let it slip because I'll be perfectly honest with you, the grief really got me to the point where I didn't want to go out there and speak on anybody's platform. I'm also a writer and author of 6 books and counting. I'm just now starting back to get into the rhythm of writing my books. So this topic that Miss Beckworth is bringing to you today, this is something that we all need to talk about because especially in our community, and I'm talking about Black folk. I've been Black almost 65 years now, so I'm sure I can talk about this subject. But when I was a little girl, at the age of 13, my grandfather passed away. And when he passed, Mama came home from the hospital because at that time we couldn't go as young children. We couldn't go into the hospitals. And so when Mama came home, I said, "Where's Daddy at?" Because I was excited. Mama's coming home from the hospital. Daddy's coming home from the hospital. And she said, "Your daddy's gone." And I said, "Where's he gone to?" 13-year-old mentality. Where's he gone to? Your daddy dead. Get over it. And that was how we dealt in grief back in 1972 and 1973, Arvilla. Okay, that was the extent of he's dead, he's gone, get over it. Well, when my husband passed in 2018, guess what? I was still grieving my granddaddy who passed back in 1972. See, and so I'm building my life back up to the place where I need to be as the drill sergeant of life because even though my husband is gone, I'm still here. God has allowed me to continue to be here on this earth for very specific purposes. And I'm finding that one of those purposes is so that I can help people to walk the grief path. Because, see, there's a very distinct path of grief. The year that my husband passed in 2018, from January to 27th, all the way up until the time he passed, I experienced a death a month. Okay. Sometimes there were 2 deaths. In January 27, 2018, my high school basketball coach passed. It knocked me for a loop because she was the only person in my entire life that had ever said to me, I'm so proud of you. You left South Carolina, you went into the Army, you did good. She told me she was proud of me. On February the 15th, 2018, I got a notification on Facebook from my nephew in Boston, Massachusetts, that my goddaughter, his sister, who was 9 months pregnant at the time, had passed. They took the baby, and 4 hours later, the baby passed. January, February, March, there was another person that graduated from high school with me. April, May, June, all these months, every month, somebody passed. So that by the time August the 7th, 2018 got to me, Arvilla, I was like, okay, I don't even know what to do. So when I got the call from my husband, and I'm looking at the phone because I'm answering my cell phone, and it says Mr. Bruno, because that's what we called each other, Mr. and Mrs. Bruno. It said Mr. Bruno. I answered the phone. I said, hey, babe, how you doing? And this woman's voice said to me, Beatrice, this is Claudia. Now, mind y'all, I grew up in South Carolina. Okay, so this is that South Carolina humor coming out. I'm looking at the phone like, heifer, you better be real good. You calling me from my husband's phone. That was all I could think.
Right.
And then she said these key words that got me. She said, John has collapsed and he's barely breathing. And at that point, I knew something was getting ready. The paradigm was about to shift in my life. Well, needless to say, he passed on that evening. And when he passed, that caused me to really look at life and death from a different perspective. Because with all these deaths that had gone on, I was completely and totally drained. And so when my husband passed, everything just left me. And mind you, after he passed, I had about 3 more deaths in 2018. Yeah. So when you talk about grieving and what happens when a person grieves and how does a person grieve, let me just say this first of all, everyone grieves differently. One of the main conversations I remember people telling me, one of the main phrases they said to me, well, I know exactly what you're going through. No, you don't. You can't possibly know what I'm going through. This one lady called me and she said, I'm upset with you. And I said, why are you upset with me? She said, well, you didn't call me personally to tell me that Pops had passed. I said, okay. And she said to me these key words that made something else shift in my brain. She said, his passing meant more to me than it meant to you. Yeah. I just saw the look on your face, Arvilla. Yeah, because I had that same look. Because at that point, and here's the humor again, I'm looking at the phone. So I say to her, so what you're saying to me is that you've been sleeping with my husband for the past 27 years, 4 months, 10 days, and 9 hours. And she said, no, that's not what I said. I said, that's exactly what you said. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the spirit of slap came upon my right hand. Because I wanted to reach through that phone and slap her just one good time. Mm-hmm. Because she didn't know what I was talking about.
Right.
But what came from all these deaths in 2018 was this little book right here. And the title of this book is Chronicles of Grief. And I wrote this book because it was very cathartic for me. I was able to process some thoughts and really go into my heart and my mind of what death really meant and what it meant for me to grieve so that I could get from one side of grief to the other, because there's a very distinctive place. When you start out on the grief path, you start at the beginning where it's unbelief. It's, I don't want to accept this. I don't want to hear about this. I don't know what I'm going to do. Why did this person have to die? And it may not even be a person. You may have lost a job. You may have lost a best friend. You may have had to move, but there's grief that you're going to encounter with all these different things because it's taking something out of you, and you have to find your place in that grief. Well, with the griefs that I went through in 2018, I found that I needed to allow myself, give myself permission to process all this stuff that was going on. And so I created these 3 steps, and I call it AWE. And what all means is accept, wait, and embrace. And the first step is accept the grief and acknowledge that you are hurting. Arvilla, do you know how many people, when you ask them the question, especially when it comes to grief, how are you doing today? And they say, oh, I'm just fine. And you know it's a lie, don't you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we will not allow ourselves to acknowledge what it is that we're going through. And unfortunately, and I know I've seen it in other communities, in other races, but especially in the Black race, we will sit up there and oh no, I'm just fine. I don't need anything. No, don't need any help. I'm good. I really am. And then go back into their bedroom and just tear everything up, tear the wallpaper off the walls, tear the beds up, just want to, and then come back out later on and say, oh, I'm just fine. I'm just peachy keen and hunky dory, and you're lying. But number one, accept the grief and acknowledge that you are hurting. It is not something you can or really want to prevent. Allow grief to have its process in your life right now. Arvilla, I hate to say it, but it was a full year before I even allowed myself to grieve.
Wow.
It was a full year. Yeah. And during that time, I would walk into rooms in wherever I was, and I would expect to see my husband sitting on a chair.
Yeah.
Okay. And now it's not as bad. Now, almost 5 years later, well, it's getting ready to hit 5 years very soon on the 7th. It's easier, but it's still challenging. But I have allowed myself to accept the grief and acknowledge that I am hurting at certain points in my life. The second thing, I had to wait on the grief and walk with it. Sometimes you'll find people that's trying to run ahead of the grief. Oh yes, I know my husband passed, and oh, I got this. Okay, we're good to go, and I'm good. No, just go ahead and wait on it, because at some point that grief is going to rise up and it's going to slap you dead on the head. It really is. And at that point, you're going to see that, yes, you still have a certain amount of strength. You do. And you're strong in certain areas. But when that grief hits you, baby, it's a whole different, it takes you to a whole different level. It really does. And I want to encourage somebody today. Allow yourself to walk with it. Allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to be human, because you're a human being. Human beings feel. Look, let me tell you something. If an animal can feel grief, how many times have you seen the commercials where the out at the, especially at the military cemeteries, you'll see a dog lying on the grave because that dog is grieving. Yeah. If animals know how to grieve, baby, you can bet your bottom dollar that humans need to know how to grieve, because if not, grief will eat you up from the inside like a cancer.
Right.
It really will. And I that's the only way I can put that, because we need to allow ourselves. We can't wait for somebody to come and give us some grief counseling. We have to allow ourselves, with the help of the Lord, to walk that path. And the final step I came to was embrace the grief. Let me read this to you. Grief will come upon you when you least expect it, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to embrace it. Give yourself permission to take your time with it. Your heart needs to heal. Time is an excellent healer if we allow the time we need to do what needs to be done with our hearts. Yeah. And that's where I am today. I was praying a couple of days ago, and I said, I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm gonna go out to the Fort Logan National Cemetery to on the day that my husband passed. And I'm just going to go out there and just, and just sit in the atmosphere. And I distinctly heard my husband's, and somebody's going to probably say, well, that's crazy right there. I distinctly heard my husband's voice say to me, it's the last time you're going out there. You need to move forward. And Arvilla will tell you, Mr. Bruno and I, oh, baby. We were quite a couple.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. We loved each other.
Yes, you guys did.
Loved each other, and oh gosh, we were a perfect fit for each other, and
Yeah.
it's hard. But when it comes to grief, no matter what area of your life, and in this little book that I wrote, I talk about the different griefs. I talk about the adult grief, the
Mhm.
childhood grief, the coming out of relationship grief,
Mm.
teen grief, and all these griefs are different from
Right.
each other.
Right.
Because when you were a child, when you were, say, between the ages of 5 and 10, if something happened to your kitty cat, okay, you would kind of be sad about it,
Yeah.
but then that that's the process. But when you became a teenager and stuff happened to you, things were quite different.
Yeah.
And guess what? As you became a young adult in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, everything changes. It's not all the same grief. When you look at, okay, the loss of a child versus the loss of a spouse.
Hmm.
When the month after my husband passed, another friend of mine, she was 6 months pregnant and she lost a baby at 6 months.
Mm.
There was a totally different atmosphere of grief around her versus around me.
Right.
Yes, we were both grieving, but she had lost a child. This was a child that she was carrying in her womb. My
Hmm.
husband was someone that I slept beside in the bed, but
Right.
carrying that child in the womb. And I know some women, I've met some women that grieve for 20, 30 years from a child that they lost. So see, we each need to understand that grief is completely different for each and every person. And when I think the best oh gosh, the best example I have of somebody coming to help me through the grief was this one pastor. She's a pastor in the Denver metro.
Mhm.
She came to the house a couple of days after my husband passed, and she said, I just came here to be with you. She said, I didn't come to give you any advice. She said, I'm going to sit here very quietly. If you want to talk to me, you are open to talk to me. But she said, I don't have anything to say to you except that I'm here for you. Arvilla, that helped me so much because she didn't cause me to say anything. She didn't want me to, I didn't have to do anything except just sit there in her presence.
Mm.
In her presence, it seemed like it empowered me to
Hmm.
be able to just stand through this stuff. So see, we don't have to necessarily understand what everybody is going through as much as just be able to be there for somebody who's going through grief.
And how did you initially cope with the loss, of Mr. Bruno? What strategies did you find most helpful?
The strategies I found most helpful was looking at my kids and actually having to be there for my kids because I knew that they were watching me. They were watching to see what I was going to do. And as I looked at them looking at me, that caused me to pray a little bit more and say, Lord, show me how to do this because I don't know. And that's okay. That's from a Christian standpoint. Yes, it is. Because I've been a born again Christian since 1991. I had to bring the Lord into it because had I not, I would not have been able to deal with it. And then I had to go back into my ministry training, if you will, and just be a comfort to my children, but also to myself, and to allow me to be a comfort to me as well. And so I think that was a good strategy. And just to recognize that, hey, this has happened
Hmm.
and you still got to walk. Yeah.
Love that answer. And what I've come to notice, when people lose usually a spouse or a loved one, sometimes it's hard. I mean, there's, like you said, there's no advice you can give someone because everyone's grief is going to be different on
Yes.
what they go through.
Mhm.
What advice would you give someone who have recently lost a spouse or a loved one? Just the initial first breath. What's the first thing that they can do during this time?
Remember, remember, remember the love that you shared. Remember the laughs. Remember the not so laughable moments. But remember, because those are the memories that you're never going to lose, but they're in your heart, and you're going to be able to use them. But allow yourself to process those memories, process that love, process those events, those experiences that you had. Allow it, because that's what you lived through. Now you're still here, you're still moving forward. And everything that you do from that point, that's what's going to be with you for the rest of your days. Yeah, for
Love
the
that.
rest of your days.
And how did your grief change over time? And what challenges did you face as you move forward?
How did my grief change over time? You know, I became a more, I became a deeper person,
Mm,
in the sense of when I remembered the things that my husband and I experienced together.
yeah.
And I would I would sit and laugh with him about things that happened. And I'd say things like, Mr. Bruno, do you remember such and such and thus and so? And I could hear him laugh, and it would cause me to laugh, because
Mm,
those were the good times that we had, you
right.
know. And then when say life changes came, like
Mm,
when my youngest granddaughter was born, all I can remember is holding her in my arm and saying, Mr. Bruno, look at this right here.
yeah.
I said, you would take this and you would just love on her. You probably wouldn't even give her back to her mama and daddy, because I know how he would do
That's
her,
true. Yeah.
And so um, life has caused me to be able to embrace all those different things that
Hmm.
we did together, and bring that forward into my life today, because now we're talking 5 years ago,
Right.
and now I'm bringing those things into this portion of my life, and I'm seeing the relevance of why I had to even experience all that stuff
Mm,
for this right here right now.
mm,
See, and we have to allow ourselves to bring that stuff with us, to embrace that
right.
stuff, Arvilla, and bring it with us, because these are the things that we're going to remember over time. And these are the things, believe it or not, that actually shape us.
Yes, I believe that. Yeah.
They shape us. Yeah.
And even when you was telling them the story, Miss B, I was tearing up over here because um, even with working with Johnny, I worked him for, so many years,
Yeah.
and we developed a friendship with him, knowing my daughter,
Yeah.
just being a part of my life. And it
Yeah.
hit me hard because I
Yes.
knew him. So when you said, I was telling John, look at our grandchild, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see you having that conversation with him. And, I remembered he would come to work and, my wife, she's going to buy me a boat, but I'm going to keep on working. His certain things he would say. And I started to tear up inside because I felt that, because I knew how
And
John was and the love he had for you.
yeah.
So when it came to grief, even though my grief wasn't the same as yours as a spouse, I lost a friend. And even to
Yes.
this day, it's hard for me every year. Every
Yeah.
year it's like tomorrow I tear up
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
like that was my friend. It was hard for me to. I've never had a grief like that in a work capacity because he turned into a friend. He wasn't a coworker anymore. He was my friend.
Hmm.
So it's like grief is hard no matter which angle. My grief is definitely different than yours,
Yes.
but it's always that feeling like 5 years ago, I still feel it like it's just the other day. I still remember Claudia calling my phone, so it's like
Yeah.
I know what it is. And
Yeah.
how did your support system, like your family, your friends, and community, play a role in your grieving process?
Okay. Let me give the bad side.
Okay.
I was the type of griever that said, I'm doing just fine. Thank you. Go away. Leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't know how to process the grief in a way that I could draw them in. As I went through the years, I discovered that I needed to help my friends
Mm-hmm.
to grieve my husband's loss. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that at the beginning, because at the beginning, I made it, in a sense, after my kids, I made it all about me.
Right.
But as I've gone through the process, I now see that it's okay for me to pull people in and for us to grieve together. Because I still have friends like you know, after 5 years. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and she said to me, she said, how long has Mr. Bruno been gone? I said, 5 years. 5 years. She said, it feels like yesterday. And she said, I still can't believe he's gone. And I said, yeah, I know. And that helped her to be able to process her 5 years of being without him. And I have to say this to your audience. I'm not even talking to you right now. He treated Arvilla like she was his daughter. Okay. And like her daughter Diamond, like she was his granddaughter. Yes, he did. He would. And he just loved those two, you know, because they were just special to him. And so, yes, when he passed, it affected them. It really did. And I saw it. I saw it in their faces. I saw it from their hearts. And so if you're grieving, especially with a loss of a loved one, okay, there's other people that you're going to have to pull into the mix, because you might have to help them to walk their grief path as well.
Right.
And it's okay. It's okay.
I love that. And what advice would you give someone who's struggling to find support or feel like they're isolated in their grief?
Allow yourself to let someone in. It may be a person that you least expect. When my husband passed, two other ladies' husbands passed almost at the same time. We weren't close, but we knew each other. We were acquaintances. We pulled each other in because we were going through similar situations with the losses of our spouses. And then there were those like the young lady I told you about who lost her baby at the age of 6 months. We went out to eat several times, and we have remained very close because it was that camaraderie of grief. And see, I know that sounds like a strange term, the camaraderie of grief, but guess what? There is such an animal, because we had to bond together and just hold on to each other and say, you know what? I don't know when, but I know that eventually it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And you have to allow yourself to be drawn to those type people. It may not even be a family member. Okay. It may not even be a close friend, but it may be an acquaintance that has seen your struggle and says, hey, let me walk with you on this thing, because I don't know all you're going through right now, but I think I can help you just a little bit. And that's where I have, I've helped a lot of people in that way right there. Yeah.
Okay. And how did you find meaning and purpose in life after your loss? And what helped you move forward?
Whew. That's a really good question. What has caused me to move forward the most, especially here lately, is because of the atmosphere of our world today. And every day we see, and I'm gonna say it like I say it from the South, we see people getting up out of here every day. And every day a voice needs to be heard that's saying, you can do this.
Yes.
You can walk this. I'm here for you. If you, the other day, a couple of weeks ago, I'm on this one page on Facebook, is Veterans for Veterans. And a young lady came on there, and she said, I don't know what to do. She said, I'm suffering with MST, which is military sexual trauma, and I don't know who to talk to. I go to the VA and they don't offer any assistance. I don't know what to say. And I wrote to her, I said, I've been there with the MST, military sexual trauma. I said, if you want to, please give me a call or just stay in touch with me. I'm here for you. Just those 4 words, I'm here for you, meant so much, okay, to just for her to read those words and say, okay, I can take another step forward because somebody else is here for me. And see, with grief, you need to know that somebody else is here for you. Yeah.
And through it all, how did you prioritize your self-care and mental health during the grieving process? Because I know it can be tough by putting yourself last because you're just trying to make it through second by second. How did you make that work?
You would ask that question right there. That's, oh my goodness, that's a question. Okay. One of the main things I discovered about myself when my husband passed, Arvilla, was that I was so caught up in taking care of everybody else, I did not know how to take care of Beatrice.
Mm.
And one of the things the Lord has had to deal with me the most is taking care of Beatrice.
Yes.
And I'm finally at the age of 64, okay, finally learning how to say no to people. And
Mm-hmm.
taking time for Beatrice and saying, well, Beatrice, we need you to do such and thus and so. No, well, you know what? I had some plans to do this right here, so I won't be able to do that. But let me know the next time that you do that, okay? All right,
Yeah.
God bless you. Bye-bye. See,
Without
because,
batting an eye. Yeah.
come on, without batting an eye. Because, see, if we don't take care of us,
Mm.
guess what? We're not going to be around too much longer. We're really not.
Right.
And it's okay to be not necessarily selfish,
Mm-hmm.
but self-aware to the point that I need to take some time off.
Yes.
I need to take some time to get my brain together. I can't do what everybody else wants me to do. I've even had to do that with my children.
Mm-hmm.
And see, I thank God my children are grown.
Yeah.
Or so they think, it's okay. It's okay. I get that.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't always be there to do what my children want me to do. And it's okay, because in order for us to help the people that we're supposed to help, we need to be around to do it.
You're right, Miss
And if we
Big.
don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be around to do it.
Right. Right. And that's what pretty much the women that I work with, they're all mothers. They're all mothers. Some are now becoming wives.
Mhm.
And like you said, you're usually the last person you take care of because you're
Yes.
taking care of your kids, you're taking care of your spouse, you're taking care of your business, you're taking care of the church, you're taking care of everything and everybody else that
Yes.
you are the one that's in the back. So after you've given everything you have, that 1% you have for yourself is not enough to keep going.
No.
Because then you're in the negative. You're not replenishing your self-care bank and your mental health to the point where your body starts to break down mentally and physically. I mean,
Yes.
if you don't get your rest, if you don't get your nutrients, if you don't get that time to yourself, you break yourself down. And that doesn't help when you're going through a grieving process either, because you need all that energy just to get that second, the
Yes, you
next step, the next day, the next word. But if
Yes.
you're not whole, how can you continue to move forward?
Yes. And see, one thing that we have to understand, that we have to acknowledge when something's not quite right up here and something's not quite right in our hearts. We have to acknowledge that and give ourselves permission to say, wait a minute, something's not right. Something's not right. 2 years after my husband passed, I finally said to my primary care physician, I need to talk with somebody.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, I'm glad you've come to that conclusion. I didn't know, Arvilla. I didn't know what I didn't know
Right.
about Beatrice and what Beatrice was facing up here and in her heart. And when I finally came to that knowledge, whew, man, you want to talk about a load coming off of my shoulders? Where I did, and see, the thing about it was, when I finally talked to the therapist, and when we finished, she said, you've helped me just as much as I hope I helped you. She said, because you've given me some insight that I didn't know about widowing, and being a widow and the grief process. She said, you've told me some things that I didn't even know. That was a therapist.
Right.
So
Right.
you see, that's when the one hand washes the other. And we have to be vulnerable enough so that we can help somebody, and in the process get help for us.
I like
And
that.
there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
And that kind of goes back to the Black community. What stays in this house or what goes on this house stays here. But then we got to kind of break that barrier as Black women, that we have to be vulnerable to get help. Because
Yes.
everybody's not the strong Black woman. Who
No.
wants to be the strong Black woman all the time? You
Come
know?
on.
So when can we come to the point where we can say, sister, I'm not good. I'm
Yes.
not feeling this. Something is wrong, and not be judged or not feel like we can't trust that person to really let our guard down and
Hmm.
say what we need to say or receive what we need to receive.
Yes.
So I love when I talk to people like you and other professionals about our mental health as Black women, because it was never really taught in our great grandma, our grandma, even our mothers. People are starting now to learn mental health
Yes.
because it's become such a big factor after the pandemic. You know,
Yes.
that was a lot in itself. And then there was a lot of grief in that, whether loss of loved one, job, not going to school or church. I mean, it was a lot going on.
Hmm.
So to know that mental health really does affect everybody, and when you acknowledge the point that yes, in the Black community we have mental health issues, it's no longer as he's touched or
Yes.
something's going on with him. No, no, no,
Come
no.
on.
It's mental now,
Hmm.
and we need to be able to redress that as a community, especially women. You know, to all my ladies listening, never feel like you have to be the superwoman, the strong woman. You have to understand, like Miss B said, you got to be vulnerable to get that help. When
Yes.
there is a loss in anything in your life, understand that you're not meant to do this alone.
Hmm.
One, like Miss B will tell you, prayer, God's the number one thing.
Yes.
And if you don't do nothing else, you
Yes.
know, getting on your hands, calling out, Lord, I need your help. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go next.
Amen.
It could be your initial start.
Hmm.
But understand we're all human beings, we're flawed, we're vulnerable. And don't feel like you can never not be touched by grief. You
Yes.
know, understand that, like you said, your testimony is now somebody else's story,
Yes.
somebody's day one. So
Yes.
by you being vulnerable and you sharing your story, it's now helping that woman that was so scared to talk to somebody about what she's going through because she's a CEO, because she
Hmm.
is a movie star, because she's entertainment. She's
Hmm.
so scared to let people know, let people in on what she's going through. So thank you for even just saying that.
Amen. Amen. And my heart is for women. And I'm gonna say it like this because while I was in the army, as a drill sergeant especially, I couldn't stand training women. I really couldn't because women are hard headed. Lord have mercy. We know everything. You can't tell us nothing, And so when it came to training, basic training soldiers, females, it was
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even want to be bothered. Give me a cycle of males.
Right.
But when I got out and I saw where we are, the destruction that's in our midst as women, and the things that's going on through our minds that we can't even comprehend. We can't even embrace each other
Right.
as women. And I'm like, some Lord, that paradigm needs to shift because we as women need each other. We
Yes.
need to embrace each other because yes, we're strong. Shaka Khan said, "I'm every woman. It's all in me." Well, guess what? It is all in you, but baby, somebody else needs to get some of that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Somebody else needs to get some of that that's all in you because they need it so that they can get to the next step in their lives. And see, I'm glad that God allowed me to go through this experience of losing my husband so that I can empower other women. Do I miss my husband? Oh, yes, you betcha. I miss that man. But if God had to allow that to happen to strengthen me in the sense of strengthening other women,
Yes.
yes, then Lord, use me, God.
Yeah.
Use me so that I can help other women to get to where they need to be so that they won't be caught up in that place of self destruction that will keep them from getting to where they need to be in life. And look, God has empowered Arvilla Beckworth to come forth to do this podcast, to give you a second chance in life so that you can be your best version of yourself. Because there's some things inside of you that still needs to be worked out. But baby, when that stuff is worked out, oh, you're going to be a bad mama jamma for real, because then you'll be able to help somebody else to get to where they need to be. And think about this. If you have little girl children, they're looking at you right now. They're looking at you and saying, oh, if mama, if auntie, if grandma, if she can do it, maybe I can do it too. See, and those are the things that you need to think down in your heart, because you're empowering another generation to go forth and be the best version of themselves. So if you got to go through some stuff right now, baby, just go on and go through it. Okay, it's going to be okay. But remember, okay, give yourself permission to feel all that stuff, to experience all that stuff, so that you can be the best you that you've ever been in your life, and you can help somebody else. I hope that helps somebody. I really do.
Yes, I
Because
know it
that's
has. I
hard to
know
do.
it has. I know it has. And Miss B, lastly, what message would you like to share with others who might be going through a similar experience as this, whether it's a spouse, a child, a parent, a job, wherever? What is the message you'd like to give somebody?
Ecclesiastes in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, and verse 1 says, "For everything there is a season and
Mm,
a time for every purpose under the heaven." When you look at your life and you look at the stuff that you have been allowed to experience, look at the season you were in, and look at the time and the purpose of that thing that you were allowed to experience, and then take the lessons from it. Okay, because not all bad stuff that happens in your life is bad, and not all good stuff is good, but it's something that you can learn from, so that as you go forward on the path that you're on, you're learning from those prior experiences, and you're putting everything into perspective and saying, oh, that was the season for that, but not for this. That was the time for that, but not for this. But now all those things are coming together, and I'm able to put them in proper perspective so that they will work in the way that they're supposed to work. That would be my advice for somebody today.
well, thank you so much, Miss B, for coming on to this podcast and talking about grief, the subject that sometimes is so sensitive for people even to talk about because they don't know where to start or, like you say, what to say.
Amen.
How can women get a hold of you in the future? Where can they connect with you online?
They can connect with me online at drillsergeantoflife.com. And, if you are going through grief right now, contact me for this little book, Chronicles of Grief. Send me an email, Beatrice at drillsergeantoflife.com. You see my name on the screen, and that's how you spell sergeant. But contact me, Beatrice at drillsergeantoflife.com. Let's have a conversation, because I want to get a copy of this book in your hands to help you walk that grief path. But other than that, www.drillsergeantoflife.com.
Awesome, Miss B. And I'll make sure I include all that information in the show notes. That way, if you guys missed it here, they will definitely be in the show notes. Before I wrap up, ladies, Miss B, there's no words to say. She's a genuine, sweet, beautiful woman.
Thank you.
And everything that I've seen in her has always showed me that I can hit that next step. She's always been that model person. She's going to be truthful, and she's going to tell you if it ain't easy, if it's not good, but you can make it through. And you need women like that in your life as a mentor, a teacher, a friend, a support system to let you know that it is okay to go through the grieving process.
Amen.
It's okay to heal this way. It's okay to get therapy. It's okay to have a support system, or even if you need to be alone for a minute so you can get yourself together.
Amen.
But look at Miss B as someone that you can definitely go to. If you feel like you don't have anybody, you're in the season of isolation, let's break that season of isolation off you and get you around some people that can help you take that next step.
Yes.
So it's an honor of mine, Miss B, for you to come onto my podcast and really share your story and just give a light to where to some people it's dark right now.
Amen.
Even in these last days, it's dark. And they
Yes.
need to see somebody out there that's still lit up for God, that's still lit up and doing what they have to do despite what they've been through. So
Amen.
thank you so, so much for being so transparent to my audience. And I just look forward to all the things you have coming your way.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to just speak life into somebody today, because there's enough darkness out there. There's enough negativity and all that mess going on. But for us to come together and just to bring light to somebody, That's what's going to make a difference in this world. So thank you so much. God bless y'all. Look, contact me, Beatrice at drillsergeantoflife.com. I'm not playing. Don't make me come look for you. Okay. Please. Because if the Holy Spirit puts you on my heart, I'll find you. I don't even know who you are. I don't know your name. I don't know where you live. And God has used me to go to places that I didn't even know and meet people. I'm like, I just drip.
She's serious. Yes.
Okay. So please don't make me come looking for you. Beatrice at drillsergeantoflife.com. God bless y'all.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I hope it's been a blessing to you. And until next time, you guys have a great week.
Amen.